Hi, welcome to This Week in Ames. I'm Susan Guiazda. On today's show, we'll learn more about a housing conference coming to Ames. My guest today is Jan Flora, who's the leader with Ames, or a leader with Ames. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Ames, which stands for Mid-Iowa Organizing Strategy, is maybe not a familiar organization with everybody here. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how you got involved?
Sure. Ames is an affiliate of the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is a community organizing organization. And I used to be a sociology professor, and I taught courses on community and included community organizing in my courses, and taught about Saul Alinsky, who was the founder of the Industrial Areas Foundation. And so when the opportunity happened that Amos came to Ames, it was originally just in Des Moines. Mm-hmm. Then I said, well, maybe I should practice what I preach.
When you said you were a sociology professor, did you mean here at the university?
Yes, I was at Iowa State from 1994 until about a little less than 3 years ago.
Okay, so now you're retired and still involved.
Yeah, I'm probably busier than I was before.
So one of the things that the Ames group has been focused on recently is the issue of housing in Ames and of housing and affordability. I shouldn't even say in Ames, really in the area, in the region. And from that interest grew interest in a conference. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, Amos chooses the issues that we want to work on, and by doing what we call house meetings, bringing groups of people together. They may be members of the Amos congregations or other people in the community. And one of the things that we kept hearing in these house meetings, which are kind of like focus groups, was that people were finding difficulties in finding housing in Ames. People of all different socioeconomic levels. So we thought that we should take a look at the housing question in Ames. And of course, this past 10 years is a period in which the enrollment at Iowa State University has increased by about 40%.
So that's an interesting juxtaposition of issues. You have already a housing crunch, and then you have more people coming in seeking housing.
Yeah, and university towns have this problem no matter what. So the added enrollment was just one additional element. And another aspect of university towns is that they generally have a lot of people in the service sector, particularly in terms of restaurants and other services for the students, but also for other people who live in the community. So we have probably close to a third of the population has incomes where they actually pay as rent, I should say of the rental population, that is greater than 30% of their income, which is
30% is sort of the
HUD standard.
For
housing and urban development.
So you're seeing an issue with income disparity, with available jobs, with housing availability, with rental. A lot of issues coming to the forefront. So the group decides maybe this is an area that's sort of ripe for some more discussion.
Yes. So we began talking with people and decided that maybe what it made sense to do was to have a conference where we could talk about the issues and get a broad sector of the community, everyone who is directly affected, involved in planning the conference and in developing not just a conference to learn, but one where action would be a result.
I think you used the words solutions-based or results-based conference, and you've put one together with the help of I know it's a big group that's working to organize this, mentioning the fact that housing is a ripple problem, and that it involves transportation and childcare, and of course we mentioned workforce. So tell me about the conference.
Okay, well, it's coming up soon. It's the 23rd of March, and it's going to be at the Sheeman Building. And the title is A Place to Call Home, Options for Housing Stability in Ames and Story County. And it's important that includes the entire county, because one of the things that we're focusing on in the conference would be the possibility of establishing a housing trust fund, a local housing trust fund. And those trust funds tend to be countywide or actually include more than one county. And I might mention that we had Eric Burmeister, who is the executive director of the Polk County Housing Trust Fund, talk in the city council chambers last November. And he explained how the trust funds work. And the state legislature has appropriated money, and unlike a lot of other appropriations, it's fairly constant and stable. That is, every year they appropriate money, and then it's divided on a per capita basis among those counties that have a trust fund.
So just quickly.
So he said, we're leaving money on the table.
Sure. Explain, real basic terms, how a trust fund might work in its basic philosophy.
Well, the basic idea is that you take funding that comes from the state, and you must have a local match, although it's not rigorous. It's only 25% of the amount, and you build an organization that can then engage in providing incentives for the construction and the rehabilitation of housing, so that people of modest means can afford that housing. So that's the basic idea. So it's a mechanism for providing funding, but it's also an advocate for housing for people of limited means.
And you're building and rehabbing existing housing stock, or you're adding to the housing stock, or both?
It can be either, okay. And both. In the case of Ames, we probably need to add to it, simply because of the population growth, and so it's really an opportunity to have an entity in the community that is always focused on housing for folks of limited means, or low-cost housing.
Sure. Jan, quickly, what are some other topics that the conference is going to cover?
Well, we're going to look at the housing trust funds first. That'll be sort of right up front on the agenda, and then we'll have breakout sessions that deal with different issues. We'll have one with developers who will look at options for building housing that includes low-cost housing within it. And there are different government programs that can be of assistance to developers. So we'll hear from the horse's mouth how this works. And then we'll also look at the role of nonprofits, because many of our nonprofits, in one fashion or another, have a lot to do with housing. Access, for instance, which is the battered women's shelter, clearly has a need for housing. There's a need on the part of the Emergency Residence Project and many other organizations. In some way, their work impinges on
you
housing.
certainly mentioned all the different organizations that might want to be involved: developers, realtors. Obviously, the program sponsored, because the conference is sponsored by the university and both the city of Ames as well as Story County. I'm sure a lot of public officials and government employees will be interested in this conference. It really seems to draw from a large pool of people that might want to attend.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the sponsors. I forgot to do that at the beginning, but that's really important, because I think these three public entities really feel that there's a need to deal with these issues.
Yeah, I know that the entire conference itinerary is available on the website where you can register, and we're going to put that registration address for you up on the website, up on our screen. Really a great opportunity for people to get involved and learn more about housing. Yeah,
and the other thing that's important is that the last part of the conference, we're going to have discussions on, okay, how might we do a housing trust fund, and what are the skills and capacities and resources that each of the organizations in attendance have. So I think that's really important. I might just mention one other breakout session, which will deal primarily with sort of urban rural issues, and particularly look at transportation. And because one of the things that I found when I came to Iowa State was that at that time we had 7 secretaries, I think. They don't have nearly that many now. And they all lived outside of Ames. And basically it was because they couldn't afford to live here. So this is a long-term problem and an issue that has to be, as you indicated, solved by a combination of housing, transportation, and workforce changes.
So really interesting conference. Again, more information on how to register is available on the website. Also, if you'd like more information from the City of Ames website, look on our front page at cityofames.org under the news section, and you can get more information about the conference. Jen, I'm so happy that you're able to stop by and tell us about this.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Again, if you'd like more information about the housing conference, that is available at our website at cityofames.org. Look at the bottom of the page under the news section. You can get a link directly to the registration, which includes information about the times, the speakers, the location, and the cost of the conference. One more thing for your calendar, the Eco Fair is coming up. Make sure to save that date. That is Saturday, April 2nd. You'll want to join us from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the City Hall Community Gymnasium, where we'll have lots of information about maintaining a sustainable community. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for This Week in Ames.